3. Welcome everybody to RightTool certification program. This is part 1 of 3 for the November/December 2025 edition of the certification program. We're going to talk about both the RightTool Certified User and RightTool Certified Expert Pro certification. The Certified User is the one that's going to be available for free for RightTool free users, and the one that's going to encompass all the contents from this part 1. Then we're going to go deep into part 1, talk about the RightTool navigation bar, accessibility settings, QBO user experience settings, tab management settings, error prevention settings, and classic report settings. And then we'll talk about what to expect in parts 2 and 3. So the RightTool Certified User is the first level of our certification program. It's the one that's going to be available 100% for free. You do not need to be a paid user. Anybody can become a RightTool Certified User. All the materials for this exam is from part 1, what you're watching live as we speak. You will need to create a free RightTool account, which will be available around the beginning of December. That this free RightTool account will allow you to log in to the RightTool portal and take the exam there. We're also making a major change from the past 3 years that RightTool has came out. Free users were able to change their settings without having to have an account with RightTool. We'll continue to have a free version of RightTool, but there would need to be you would need to be a signed-in user to be able to change your settings. So that's going to be a very important requirement of getting certified, is you have to be able to log into the portal, because we need to be able to know who you are and have your information so we can issue that credential. You must get 80% or more of the exam to pass. This is designed really for general learning and training purposes only, for those that want to do consulting on RightTool, or teach others in RightTool, or resell RightTool, or know RightTool in a real deep level. Maybe they want to deploy RightTool across a firm, or whatever it happens to be. For those people that want to take a look at the next level of certification, you can use the logo, the RightTool Certified User logo, the one you see on the screen here, and we'll issue your high quality one once you get certified, in internal materials like email signatures, personal profile pages, but cannot be used for commercial external marketing that imply any sort of partnership. This is for the user level of the certification. The next level of the certification, which will be the RightTool Certified Expert. So you have to get certified as a user first, and then the second exam will be the Certified Expert. That is going to require an active RightTool Pro account. So you have to be an active Pro user to be able to get access to this certification. You must get the same 80% or more to pass the exam, but there will not be unlimited tries. You must pass it in at least 3 tries every 90 days. So we're raising the bar a little bit in terms of standards for this level of certification, because we will have the beginning of next year, we will create a user list, basically our expert list, that will be listed. Once you get certified as a user, you'll be listed publicly. So maybe you can get leads, especially if you're an accountant. And also, we're going to combine this with an affiliate program. So for those that want to resell or recommend RightTool and do some revenue sharing with us, you will be able to do that at the RightTool Certified Expert. You will also have access to early beta features and a certified expert-only communication channel with us, the RightTool developers. So those certified experts will actually be very much part of the development process and will be the first line of defense for giving us suggestions or feedback on how to improve our product. The certified experts will be the insiders, so to speak, into the RightTool world. You will also have access to, or the ability to opt in to train for us. So as we grow RightTool and we bring a lot more new users, we need experts to help these people get on board. So you will have the option, this is completely optional, to be added to a list of trusted certified experts that we can deploy you to help us do trainings and onboarding and even pay you to do that. Okay. And then we will have the most senior certified experts, the ones that show and prove that they're really, really good trainers. We'll also start inviting you to come into the RightTool bi-monthly webinars and do some demonstrations of your own, especially if you have your own workarounds, your own ideas, and your own things that you want to showcase to the RightTool community. We'll very, very much welcome those super, super duper power users that we're going to be selecting from after we have used you for a couple of trainings to onboard new people. So that should give you a general idea exactly how this is all going to play out. So right now in November, the most important piece really is the training piece, get all the training available. And then in December, take the exam. And then January and February, all the other stuff is going to come to life. Another quick disclaimer here is we are recording this on November 10th, 2025. This will be the official certification program that will last a whole year. So you may be watching this the day that we're recording it, or you may be watching the recording, a year into the future. We will probably do renewals of this every year. And it is version 1.37.1. So as long as you are in 1.37 or higher, you should be seeing roughly the same thing we're seeing. But of course, the product evolves pretty fast. All right, we're going to start with RightTool navigation. So before we do the navigation, let's talk about how to install RightTool, especially for those getting started, like right from the beginning. So what you want to do is you want to go to the Google Chrome Web Store. That's chromewebstore.google.com. And then you're going to search in the extensions. You're going to search for RightTool, and it should be the only one, hopefully. Our trademark stays, but it should be the only one that's called RightTool for QuickBooks Online. That's going to take you straight into where you see the R and the little logo there, and you'll know that's RightTool because it's a 5-star rated app. So you click on that, and then you'll have the option to add to Chrome. You must be using a Chromium-based browser. That means Google Chrome, of course. It means Microsoft Edge. It means Brave. There's some features that only work in Google Chrome, but for the most part, most things work in any Chromium-based browser. There's a lot of interesting new Chromium-based browsers, like Perplexity's browser Comet, like ChatGPT's browser Atlas, like Arc's browser, and there's Opera. There's a lot of browsers out there that are coming out that are Chromium-based. So as long as they're Chromium-based, and the way you'll know is you'll see an Add to Chrome button. So if you are in any other browser that's not a Chromium-based browser, you will not see an Add to Chrome button because you just won't be compatible. Perfect example of this is Safari. So RightTool does not work in Safari, and Firefox. RightTool does not work for Firefox. When you first install RightTool, you get a pop-up of our terms and conditions disclaimer. You can X out of that. There's really nothing you must do on that further. And then when you go back into QuickBooks, so for example, I already had QuickBooks open, but I didn't have RightTool installed. All you really need to do is refresh. So if I click on refresh, once the extension is installed, you should see the left navigation bar pop to the right. This is kind of your first step, okay? On the left navigation bar, you're going to see a running ad in the bottom, a rotating ad. That's because the free edition is ad supported. So you'll see all sorts of different ads, different partnerships that we've had that we use rotating ads for. Once you're on the paid edition, you will no longer see ads because you are on the paid edition. Now, the first thing that you must notice is there is a little arrow pointing to the right, to the left of the RightTool logo that allows you to collapse and expand the navigation bar. It is your choice whether you want to work 100% expanded, 100% collapsed. There's actually a setting that allows you to change that, okay? If you click on the RightTool logo, that also collapses and expands. So even though it's not the arrow itself, just that entire header, so to speak, is clickable. Now, there's two other hot links here. So one is the QBO, the type of QuickBooks line you have. When you click on that, it takes you to the account settings. So if you were kind of wanted to go into the account settings, there's a sort of secret shortcut for that. And it's right there just by clicking on QBO and whatever else says afterwards. Where it says free or pro and then the version number, when you click on that, it takes you to the release notes. This is where we keep you informed of all the new things that we have added in any edition. So as we upgrade new editions and add more features, you can quickly access the release notes simply by clicking on whether it says free or pro and then the version number. Now there's a couple of icons here. They're all really important to point out. The first one is your create icon. This would be the equivalent of clicking on the create icon that is on QuickBooks Online's left rail. And the idea behind this is you probably by using RightTool, you're sort of accustomed to looking to the right. So we don't want you to be moving left and right with your head back and forth. So we gave you one place to access that. That's also accessible via keyboard shortcuts. Now, one really neat thing is when you click on the new button, the create button, you can hit tab, and tab automatically highlights one of these options, which you can then also use left, right, up arrow. So if you are a keyboard shortcut enthusiast like I am myself, I find myself using that keyboard shortcut combination. So you click on create button, then click on tab, and you can immediately start moving that box around. The settings button, these are the QuickBooks settings. This would be the same thing as clicking on the general gear menu. So that's there. Now you would say, well, that's very close to where it would be. I'm not sure if that's saving me much time. Well, it turns out that QuickBooks recently added something called the full screen, or AKA Zen mode, which is the icon all the way to the right. Now that's actually a QuickBooks function that we surfaced the icon. If you click on that, you actually will zoom in and you won't see the top navigation bar or the left rail. So if you do that, then you won't have access to the settings button. So the way we give you access to the settings button is by giving it to you in RightTool. So you have the ability to access settings and create while being in full screen. And we find that to be a really useful feature. Now up here in the toolbar, we also have the settings button, which we're going to get to that very soon. We have a sort of microphone button, and the purpose for the microphone is for you to enable your microphone and then be able to type in the search bar. So right now, everything I'm saying is being dictated into the search bar. That's kind of the idea, more or less. We'll get back into dictating, sort of the value of dictating into the search bar in a little bit. Let's just stop the microphone from running for now. Then there's the key button that's here. The purpose of the key button is to take you to the shortcuts page of RightTool, in the RightTool page, where basically we tell you any keyboard shortcuts that we have enabled through the keyboard shortcut settings. They're going to be displayed here, including the QuickBooks Online default shortcuts. So both the QuickBooks Online default shortcuts and the RightTool added keyboard shortcuts are listed on this page. Okay, so that's kind of the idea, that we give you the most useful things right there in front of you. Now, the purpose of the search bar is for you to type anything you want, press enter, and it directly open QuickBooks search. Okay, or type anything you want, and if the shortcut exists under that name, it will show up there as well. So for example, if I write the word test, so I'm just making it very simple. I write the word test. There are two things in terms of the built-in shortcuts that have the word test in it. So if you can click on any of those and access those pages. But I can also press enter, and what it does is it will open a new tab, and in that tab, it will open the transaction search. Now, QuickBooks is kind of quirky with the usage of text and dollar values in the search. So you're going to see that sometimes work immediately, sometimes it'll sort of refresh, but you immediately see that there are the word test right here. It's used in multiple contexts in this case, where are there transactions that contain the word test. So it basically did a memo search or a description search inside multiple transactions. And that's kind of what this did. Now, the dollar amount search is also sometimes a little tricky. So we're going to try it. I'm just going to type 500.00, press enter, and then we'll see if a QuickBooks takes on the feature. If it sticks on, sometimes it doesn't, or get stuck with the last one. But okay, this time it did it. So it knew immediately to go to equals and 500. So you search for an exact dollar amount. Okay. We are continuing to experiment with different variations of dollar amounts to in between search and more than and greater than. But we have to kind of upkeep with QuickBooks changing the mechanism in which that gets done. But text search and dollar amount search are the two most important things. This search also allows you to do search within the ecosystem of RightTool shortcuts. So for example, if I'm looking for every report that has the word detail in it, I'm just going to type detail. So then when I type detail, this is going to give me a list of every report that contains the word detail. In this case, there might be a setting with anything called detail, but for the most part, and this is more something that I know as a QuickBooks Power user, is if it contains the word detail, it's probably a report. Okay. So that's all that everything is in here. Now, if there are any of these particular areas of QuickBooks or reports in QuickBooks that you want to add it to your favorite. So let's say, for example, this check detail report is a report that I use quite a bit. All we need to do is click on the little star, and that little star now makes this a official shortcut. We're going to go to the favorites shortcuts really quick, but it makes it an official shortcut that lands into our favorites. Same thing, for example, if I type the word class, then we can see anything that has the word class. There's profit and loss by class, and then we can click on that. Now, to kind of piggyback on the microphone, I'm going to click on the microphone, and then I'm going to say something verbally that I'm looking for. Profit and loss by class. So what I did was I clicked on the microphone. I talked to my computer. Again, this only works in Google Chrome because Google Chrome has a special API that can access the microphone. The other Chromium-based browsers, it's kind of tricky to get that working. But I'm still dictating, so it's still adding stuff to it. But that's kind of the point. And you can also combine that with Go. So for example, profit and loss by class Go. And that Go basically takes over an enter function. So it does the search, then you press enter, and then go straight into that report. Now we're continuing to improve that. I said there's a lot of opportunities on dictation and accessibility type of settings, but that's eventually what you can expect from the search bar. Now, favorites. So we are under favorites, and then we see all the default favorites. So the ones that first show up when you install RightTool, which is a QBO homepage, which has no number associated with it. We'll talk about those numbers in a second. And then we have numbers 1 through 10 that are pre-built for you. These are the ones that we determine, the RightTool team, we determine what are the things that most people use. We've also studied this and asked a whole bunch of people. But your experience might be different. So for example, if you remember earlier, we added check detail and profit and loss by class as two favorites that we wanted to add from our previous search. If check detail happens to be the thing that you access the most, we can click and drag that all the way to the top. And now that takes the #1 spot. And then let's say profit and loss by class is your second most common. We click and drag and bring that all the way to the top. Now, if you look at your keyboard, and if you look at the numbers between 1 and 0, to the left of the 1, we have that squiggly line, right? That back apostrophe, that tilde. That squiggly line actually activates QBO homepage. So if I click Control, and we're gonna do keyboards, we're gonna spend more time in keyboards towards the end because the keyboard shortcut is just quite a bit. But if I hit Control Alt and the squiggly line, that actually activates the homepage. And then the number itself, like Control Alt 1 or Control Command if you're in a Mac, activates the check detail. And if I do Control Command 2, that will activate profit and loss by class. So the purpose of having those first 10 numbers numbered is to remind you that that is actually a custom shortcut for you to use. And there's all sorts of other keyboard shortcuts, but that's probably the ones that stand out the most. Now, manage tabs is useful for when you have multiple tabs open. So for example, I want to close all the other tabs that I have that are not QuickBooks related. So I have a tab here that says getting things done. That's a home page. I have a tab here, which is my transaction search that I was using earlier. I have a tab here for profit and loss by class, and I have a tab here for account settings. Every time you open a new tab that's related to QuickBooks, Manage Tabs will keep tabs, for the lack of a better term, of all the tabs that are open, and they will show up on the screen so you can quickly swap across the tabs. So you can click on any of these and quickly go into any tab that you want, okay? That's kind of the value. And if you want to close every tab but the one you have open, we have a shortcut called Close All, which is amazing. And then also we have a one for Refresh All. So let's say, for example, you have 10 reports open and the reports haven't refreshed. You can do a Refresh All, and then you can basically refresh all reports in one shot. Now, QuickBooks is getting better and better at fixing the auto refresh for reports. But if you need to run a macro to refresh everything in one shot, you can do it from here, or you can individually close any of these settings one by one, any of these tabs, or you can click on close all and click OK, and it'll close everything but the tab that you're working on. Now, you also see down here two other tabs by default. One is called All Reports, and the other one is called Shortcuts. So that allows you to search through our database of every single individual QuickBooks screen that has a URL, a unique URL attached to it. So for example, you can just use it to browse. So if I click on All Reports, and then we click on, let's say, Payroll, we see these are all the reports that are available. And we're always upkeeping these. If you go to Employees, you see all the reports available for employees, expense and vendor. So we have them grouped in almost the same way that you see them grouped on the report section. Also, some of them we have the classic view for the ones that still have a classic view. Okay, there's some rumors in the QuickBooks world that the classic reports are going to go away pretty soon, but they never really give an actual date. So there's modern versions, classic versions of reports. So as long as there are classic versions of reports, we will try to also keep a list of those in there. And again, by you clicking on the little star, you propagate them or you bring them up into favorites, so you can have them in this sort of first page, and you have the freedom to move up and down. So that's the right navigation bar that pretty much covers everything that's readily available in the free edition. There's another go ahead, Mark.
Oh, go ahead. I was just going to say there's one more thing about adding the custom favorites that can be kind of cool, but you might have been going into that anyways.
Yeah, actually, I thank you for reminding me. So we have a universe of favorites or shortcuts that is in there. Sometimes you might stumble upon a new screen of QuickBooks or some area in QuickBooks that maybe we don't have a shortcut for, or it wasn't terribly clear on how to get to it using the description that we have. So for example, let's say this client overview page here doesn't have a direct shortcut, or it's a new page or something like that. We can click on Add Custom, and any page that you're in allows you to add custom. Now, this page sort of gives you one pop-up. The pop-up shows you the URL. So if it starts with /app, we know it's a QuickBooks URL. And then based on the title or the header of the page, we'll do that. But you can call it whatever you want. We can just call it Client Overview. Okay. Sometimes it will add the company name, and then if you are a QuickBooks Power user that has multiple clients, so to speak, or multiple companies, you don't want to have the company name in there because that would be confusing. Because the purpose of having shortcuts or custom shortcuts is so you can use them across every company file, and it's just one setting for it all. So we click on Save, and then there it is. It says Client Overview. Now you can also add outside links. So for example, if you have a tag in Keeper and you want to see a particular client in Keeper, or you have a tag in Gmail for like your leads or something like that, or things to do, you can do that. So as long as you know what the URL is, for example, so this is the URL for the slides that we're working on right now. So as long as I can copy that URL, all I have to do really is go to Add Custom and then overwrite whatever is there now, because it assumes that the current page that you have now is the one you're going to use. But if you overwrite it by just pasting the new URL, and then we call this RightTool certification slides or whatever it is. And then I click on Save. So now that shows up in here. Now we haven't, and this is something that we might have to consider, is to indicate them in a different way when they're a non-QuickBooks shortcut. It's not terribly obvious. So I would just use your own style, maybe add an asterisk or a pound or some symbolism that you know that if I click on this, it's actually going to take me to something way outside of like it just did just now. It's just going to kick me out of QuickBooks. So something to think about whenever you do something that will sort of kick you out of QuickBooks, or it's going to be an outside link. Okay. Yeah. Now, once the link is created, there's no edit button. So the way you edit, so to speak, is you get rid of it. You delete it. By deleting it, literally, it's just clicking on the star. That gets rid of it. All the yellow stars, when you click on them, that deletes them. All the white stars, it removes them from the list, but they can be accessed again through the search because they're part of the standard database. So white stars is part of our full dictionary of links, and yellow is sort of custom. So there's no way to edit. You just delete it, click on Add Custom, create it again, change the name. That's kind of how we do it. Mark, you want to say something?
No, I think you pretty much covered it.
All right. Next step here is, and this is a really important one, is with any Chrome extensions, whether it's RightTool or otherwise, there's always going to be a little extensions button in the top of the browser. And in that extensions button, you have the ability to pin an active extension. I am very, very bullish on pinning your extension and bringing the icon up here because we actually added additional functionality, sort of hidden functionality that's inside of that extension pin icon. You must pin the icon first by clicking on the little extension icon and then clicking on pin, right? So there's pin and unpin to bring it up to the surface. Now, once you bring it up to the surface, there's a couple interesting things you can do. So one is if you do a regular left click, you have access to the release notes, which, as we mentioned earlier, you have access to them by clicking on the free or pro and the number next to it. You could turn off the sidebar. Now, this is kind of a super advanced move. If we turn off the sidebar like this, we essentially kill the visual aspects of RightTool with that sidebar, but all the other functions that you turn off or on would still work. You just won't see the sidebar. So we've had a particular user that tells me, Hector, that sidebar is on the way. I don't want to see it. There's a way to turn it off and on. So if you ever have RightTool installed and your sidebar is gone, it's probably because you have manually turned it off. So you can turn it back on by clicking in there. So that's that pin icon that has that little sort of hidden option in there. Also, if the extension is acting kind of weird, or maybe QuickBooks is acting kind of weird, you have these two sort of reloading functions. This one reloads the extension. That's if something's strangely working with the extension. And we also have clear cache. This is the famous clearing cache and cookies for QBO. You go to that process. Again, if your QBO feels stuck or slow, it does that, and it will reset some of the settings, that are built into RightTool, that are built into QuickBooks, that QuickBooks kind of saves in the browser's memory. But it's sometimes it's necessary because it's just acting very strange. And then we have a sample file link here if you want to go straight to a sample file. And then we have the pro login, which is the page that you need to log into if you want to, for example, to take the exam or to manage any of the settings that have to do with the pro account. We'll go back to this towards the end, kind of discuss this piece. But this pro account, this is your relationship. This is your billing relationship with RightTool. So if you're a pro user, you will have to have access this to change your billing setting and that sort of thing. If you're the admin of a pro user, this is where you add additional users, control what they can have access to. You can actually control what your team has access to in terms of features, what the RightTool looks like, that sort of thing. Additional benefits like the Fort, which is friends of RightTool, like other people that create training for us, for our community, you can access through here. And at some point in mid-December, there's going to be a section over here on the bottom somewhere that says certification. And then once you have your account, you log in there, and you'll be able to go into certification, and you'll be able to take both exams. So if you're in the free edition of RightTool only, you will only be able to take the user exam. If you're in the pro edition, any of the paid editions, you'll be able to take both the user exam, and then that will unlock the expert exam. Okay. And also, if you right click, so not the left click, but the right click inside that pinned icon, you can also quickly go into options. So that's the same thing so clicking on that is the same thing as clicking on the settings button that we said we were going to talk about later, which is the wrench and the screwdriver, that settings button. So that's basically two ways to access that. And also in here, if you right click on that, you can go to manage extension. Okay, you can go to manage extension, and in manage extension, you can do two really important things. One is you can temporarily turn it off. I know many people that do training videos or teaching their clients or whatever, and they don't want to confuse people by showing them RightTool. So you can temporarily quickly turn that off. If you think you're in an old version, or you saw some email or some social media posting that says, hey, we updated RightTool, and you seem to be in an older version. So this is 1.37.1, and you click on update. If there's any updates, like for example, perfect example, we recently did an update for 1.37.2. So that's a force update. You don't have to click on update. Like Chrome does pings, and every so often pushes like routine update. But if you're trying to really push that update, you can do that. by turning on this thing called developer mode on the top right, and then clicking on update, and that will help you do that. Also, if you use incognito in your browser, so every once in a while you want to log into QBO as incognito and RightTool doesn't show up, that's because our incognito option is turned off, so you can turn it on here. That allows you to even use RightTool even in incognito. So that's really up to you, and by default, that's turned off. So you also find, if you also find yourself needing incognito to, needing RightTool in incognito, that will do that. Last thing I'll show before I go deep into the settings, and then I'll also have Mark kind of chime in. Let me just go back and turn it on, right? Because I had turned it off. So let's turn on the extension and then go back and refresh. So you notice how, very, very quickly I was able to turn off and on that extension without having to uninstall it. We recommend against uninstalling it because you can lose some of your settings, and definitely you don't want to do that. Mark, you want to talk about anything else that I missed before we jump into the next thing?
Let's see here. I think you have most of the basics of RightTool done right as there. And again, there will be a recording of this, so people can go back and watch.
Exactly. Okay. So, and also, it's a side comment that I shouldn't do an official certification, but I have to because my personality is weird like that. This is the first time I've been so calm and poised and slow doing anything that has to do with a demonstration. Generally, I'm just super excited, and so I'm trying to go slow for those people that need to kind of go at their own pace and don't need to slow down the video afterwards. Okay, so that was RightTool navigation bar and RightTool settings. Now we're going to talk about accessibility settings. So what we're going to do is we're going to break down all of the RightTool. We're going to deep dive into all the features based on each of the sections of the settings. So if I click on the settings button, which is right next to the QuickBooks settings and the microphone, this is the RightTool settings, we go into the settings page, which is where we get to turn off and on all the features. We're going to start with RT font size modifier and RT sidebar. So I'm going to go back into QuickBooks one more time. You get to see, based on the proportions, how big that left navigation bar and how big the font is. If I need to modify that in here, there's basically a number modification. So if I click up, we get it's a kind of a quick teaser on the right that kind of lets you know, okay, this is what we're doing in terms of enhancing and increasing and decreasing the font size, and then how much bigger I want the sidebar to be. Okay, we have a little bit of a threshold in it. You can make it smaller or bigger. So depending on your resolution, on your monitor size, you have those, like you have up to 5 clicks, 5 notches up and 5 notches down. So you can modify that. So once you're done doing that, and I go back into QuickBooks and then I refresh, you're gonna see that RightTool bar is gonna change slightly in terms of size and font size. So you have that level of customization. It's really, really important. The next one is called auto close left navigation bar. So we have the RightTool navigation bar, or sometimes we call the right navigation bar. And then we have QuickBooks's left navigation bar that's sort of right next to the rail. Now, depending on what page you're in, so if you're in the dashboard, QuickBooks doesn't by default show the left navigation bar. The left navigation bar only shows when you're in reports and when you are in my apps. Now, so as you notice, it's keeping them collapsed. So I have to expand it, click on one of these things, and then it collapses again. So I expand it, click on any of these things, and then collapse again. Some people get super annoyed by that, and we totally understand, right? Because that's not natural behavior, but it's a custom behavior. Some people say, yep, I want to click on that and I want it to go away, because I find myself going back and open and closing it manually anyway. So if you turn off auto close left navigation bar, so you just turn that feature off, and then we go back into QuickBooks. As I navigate different areas of QuickBooks with that left navigation bar open, notice that it switches the screen, but it doesn't automatically close the left navigation bar. So it's going to be completely up to you what experience you want. One thing that you will notice, you notice more and more to the certification program, that the philosophy behind RightTool is to give everybody their own super customized experience, right? So every accounting professional, every QuickBooks Power user has their own style, their own way they work, and we don't want to kind of force everybody to work in the same way, right? So that's the idea behind, and sort of the risk behind adding so many buttons, because right, people get overwhelmed saying there's way too many buttons. But we think of this like a cockpit, right? You walk into the cockpit, yes, there's an autopilot button, but anytime you need to manually pilot, you need to be able to control every aspect of the plane, and that's kind of the way we envision that RightTool works. The next one's going to be keyboard shortcuts, and then this is just turning it off or on. We're not going to get too deep into it. Where Mark and I decided that maybe towards the end, if we have time, we'll go back to it, because we could spend a whole hour on keyboard shortcuts, and there's several videos on YouTube and that sort of thing. But the most important thing is there are some overriders like Control Shift down arrow, Control Shift left arrow, just because certain computers, or with don't remember if it's Mac or Windows, have some apps installed where Control and an arrow work on something else. So if we need to override the Control up arrow, Control down arrow, Control left arrow, we can override them here by doing the Shift. And the control arrows here, the most important one is Control left collapses the left navigation bar. Okay, in a Mac, it would need to be Control Command. So Control Command left navigation bar, Control Command right opens the right navigation bar. This is me pressing buttons on a keyboard. There's no mouse being functioned. Okay, so these are the two most important ones. So Control left arrow or Control Alt left arrow on a PC, and right arrow. So those are the most important navigations. That left rail, QuickBooks does not have a natural way of collapsing that. So we're doing that with a minus key. So Control Command minus or Control Alt minus closes the left rail. So that allows us to completely control, what do I want to close, the left rail or just the left navigation bar. And particularly, that's going to be valuable specifically when you have a custom keyboard or a Stream Deck or one of those, shortcut keyboards where you can tie any of these cool little functions to those. The keyboard shortcut list is pretty long. So if you click on the little eye where there's a link to YouTube, and we're working through YouTube to be able to embed the videos in the settings. YouTube made a change where they don't let you embed anymore, so you can only click on that. But there's a link there that says keyboard shortcuts, which is the equivalent of the link that's on, let's go back to RightTool, the link that's here that has the key icon. So in either one, you can click on that and you can print this page. And all the way in the bottom, we have a PDF version of that too. So if you click on download, this is a PDF. We created a PDF version of those shortcuts. We're still going to work on the formatting and make it a little bit prettier. We actually welcomed our community to make that prettier for us, and we're getting some suggestions on what a PDF looks like. But that's there, available for those that need to print. Okay. So so we're still in the accessibility toolbar. That's the keyboard shortcuts. The next one's called speech to text dictation. Now, this only works on Google Chrome. The other browsers, for some reason, don't allow this. And there's multiple ways to do this. If you hit Control Shift A, you're going to enable dictation anywhere in QuickBooks. So for example, let's say I'm going to create an invoice, and then I want to write a bunch of stuff in description, right? So I'm going to pick, the customer, and then I'm going to pick the item, but then I don't want to type all the other stuff. So I just want to hit Control Shift A. Give me a second, because on a PC, it might be a little bit different. Let me go back for a second here.
Might be Control Alt A.
Yeah.
But
let's see here. So it is Control Shift A, just to double check. I'm gonna do it one more time. Control Shift.
Oh, did you have the setting turned on?
Yeah, it's on. Yeah. So we're gonna do. So I'm gonna delete what's in there now. Hit Control Shift A and start talking. Working on the permit for the second building from the second approval of the government contract period. Mark Corum is the one that needs to do the final approval on the job. The original bid was $1 million, but we have negotiated a contract down to $875,000 with a contingency payment at the end if we complete before July 30th, 2025. So as you can see, I said a bunch of stuff. and it allowed us to dictate into it. Now, Mac and Windows have their own settings for dictation, but this is actually the browser's dictation. This is the Chrome's dictation. So you can work with the native OS dictation that works just fine. But for those that can't get it to work or it's not working for some reason, we basically tapped into Google Chrome's dictation setting. So that's what that speech to text dictation is as well. Now, some folks find all these red buttons. Okay, so our philosophy is, because QuickBooks doesn't add any red buttons to any of their software, is if we make the buttons red, we make it really, really clear that these are RightTool related. So we made it red. For some people don't like red or can't see red, it doesn't really matter, right? So there's an option here called black and white color scheme. So when you turn that on, then you will not see red created by or added by RightTool anymore. So anything that RightTool adds that is previously red is now black. So it's going to feel a little bit more sort of intuitive, sort of part of the UI, but it wouldn't be blatantly obvious that it's a RightTool feature. So it's going to be up to you which one you want. And then colorblind negatives, we actually had a user early on that can't see red, it was colorblind, and we made negative numbers in a report, we made them blue. So the way that would work is we're going to turn that on, and then I'm going to go and pull up a report. I'll pull up maybe a P&L or something like that. And so let's go pull up a P&L. And it needs to be the classic reports. We're still working on that for the modern reports. As a matter of fact, circa mid 2026, we should be able to start getting all the options related to modern reports. Just QuickBooks has been doing a lot of. Give me 1 second. QuickBooks has been doing a lot of changes to the modern reports, and it's been kind of difficult to keep track of. So let's see if we have any let's do this year, see if we have any negatives to report here. If not, we could probably create a negative. Let's just do let's see if we just do last week. See if we have an unprofitable week. Okay, it's a good example. So here we have a negative number. So QuickBooks has the option for you to go into customize and then go into show red, right? So that's an option, a built-in option into QuickBooks that shows that red. So I click on run report. What we've done is we made that sort of like a really bright blue. So for those colorblind folks that can't see red, they should be able to see that that bright blue. And that's it. That's at that point, that's really all that does. But it's small for some people, huge to many. That's something we take pride of quite a bit. So let's move over to Q up. And then before I jump in, Mark, did I miss anything on this side?
No, I think you covered it well.
Okay. For those asking, is this going to be in the exam? Is that going to be in the exam? Absolutely everything in this video could be in the exam. The video, you could watch it alongside while you take the exam. It's going to be an open book exam. So anything that's contextually in this video could be in the test. So we're going to go to QBO user experience, which is shortened by QBO UX, which is user experience. And there's quite a bit of settings here. Some of them we're going to demo and some of them we'll just talk about. So auto close pop-ups. So this is a catch-all setting that we have for when QuickBooks creates new pop-ups. And a lot of our users report saying, hey, the chart of accounts has a new pop-up. The register screen has a new pop-up. The reconciliation screen has a new pop-up. And these pop-ups could be, hey, we have a new feature. It could be, try something new, or maybe cross-selling some product. When our users report to us that pop-up is annoying, we suppress that pop-up with this setting. So it's kind of difficult to replicate, but just so you know that
I do have a thing pulled up for that if you want to want me to show.
Yeah, sure. Let me start sharing, and you can share the screen and try it out.
Okay. Let's see here. Oh, accept the share request. There we go. And so an example, just really quick, of one example of what we do with the hiding pop-ups is, let's say you're inside of your client section inside of QuickBooks. There's this update, what's new for October thing that shows at the top. If I don't have that turned on, then that shows up. But once I come in here and turn on auto close pop-ups and refresh the page, you'll then see that that pop-up that was originally there doesn't show up anymore. Now, there's more than just that. It's just that that's the easiest example for me to show you of when we close pop-ups for you.
Yeah, while you're at it, I guess go through QBO user experience and I'll add color commentary if you want to go through all those settings.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine by me. Okay, QBO user experience. So first thing we have after auto close pop-ups is jump
just,
to location buttons.
Just zoom in a little bit.
Oh, right. I forget that I like to have everything zoomed out.
Yeah, 125, 110, that's good enough.
Yeah. So I'm just going to go into a report or go into a company to show the jump to location buttons. The example I'm going to use is going to be the bank register. So I'm just going to go into a register, and you'll see this in a couple of different screens. So this one is not just one screen. But if I go into here and then I click on a transaction or anywhere in the screen, if I click on the button that will say jump to last, it will scroll down to wherever it is that the last thing you clicked on was, and then it will highlight it in a red border. Depending on what screen you are, it can be, or it can make it so the background of whatever is red instead. So that's how the jump to last button works. Then we have the journal entry print button. So to show this one, I'm going to go into a journal entry. And just to make this even more illustrative, I'm going to log out of the Pro version and then refresh this page. And once everything loads in, so the print, this is the print version of the journal entry. So all that is when you're inside of here, if you have a journal entry with anything in it, there will be a button on the bottom left that says RightTool Print. It will just take everything that is in that journal entry and make it into a print out window for you so that you can have that available. So you can see it'll look something like this. The next thing is the export journal to CSV. Kind of similar to that journal entry print, except for this one will show at the top of the journal entry. So you can see here, there's just a button that says export CSV. I'm going to click on that. And once this opens up, you will get a CSV or an Excel basically that has everything in there just the way that you have it inside of the journal entry. Now there's also a secondary option here to break out the account number. So what that would mean is if you have account numbers here, like we have this 1540 point whatever, if I refresh this page first, and then after I do that, then I export this to CSV, it should break out that account number into its own column inside of here. So we'll just wait for that to load. Of course, it's not going to work for this one very specific point. That is how it always goes.
But when it is working, you just see a completely separate column for that number.
Yes, exactly.
Only thing I like to add on this is that this feature is used very much in combination with a different feature that's going to be covered in the advanced certification, on the expert certification, which is the pasting or importing back into journal entry. So very often people export a current big journal entry, a payroll journal entry, whatever it happens to be, and they'll modify it in Excel or the spreadsheet software and then bring it back. So that export sometimes is fundamental to also work in combination with the import or the paste that's available only on the Pro version.
Exactly.
And there's for the journal entries, there's no way to batch print them, right? You just print one at a time.
Yes.
If you're looking for batch printing, so to speak, then you will have to run a report that contains a whole bunch of journal entries and print the report itself. But this is only one at a time.
Yeah. So The next feature is going to be the register/reconcile useful links. So this is a very small little thing, but something people have commented that they like, which is just when you go to the reconcile page or the bank register, you'll notice that there are going to be red links that pop up. For instance, up here, there's this back to banking button. So that'll take you back to the bank feed for this particular account. And then in the reconcile page, we also have features in here. But the main thing, I'm not going to go too much into detail about it here. But the main thing is it's just about, this feature is just about navigation. So you see here the back to banking and the reconcile history at the top here to make it easy to go between different pages. Next, we have the journal balance visual. So this is turned off by default, but it is a cool feature. I'm going to actually just reopen this journal entry or refresh this journal entry after turning on journal balance visual. And once I am inside of here, if I, let's say, add 10 to this side, you'll notice there is an additional line added to the journal entry that tells you what you need in order to balance out this journal entry. The other cool thing about that is that if you have an existing number in a debit or credits column and you backspace it, it will give you a placeholder thing for you to see how much is the exact amount you need to put in order for you to get this to balance. So if I put 545.71, it'll now balance everything out on the journal entry. So that is what the journal balance visual feature is about. The next feature that we have is larger drawers. So this is a thing where, let's say you are in the bank feed and you are creating a rule. Let's see how long it takes for the bank feed to load. So yeah, let's say I go into here and I create a rule. Anytime in QuickBooks that you see this little side thing on the right pop out, by default, it is actually about half the size of what you're seeing here. RightTool makes it larger. That's all that feature is doing, just to give you a little bit more room to see things inside of here. So that's what that feature is about. Next up is auto print reconciliation reports. So let's say that I go into a reconcile and I resume, and I'm going to refresh this page so that the setting populates. And I'm going to click finish now and add adjustment and finish. What will happen is once this thing says, hey, you finished reconciling, you can now view the reconciliation report. It will automatically open up that report into a new screen and make it available for you to print just like this. So this is something that is turned off by default, but if you are somebody who likes to print those reconciliation reports, this will even work when QuickBooks does not give you that little pop-up right here that says view.
Yeah,
So that's one of the cool things.
Yeah, print or save as a PDF, both.
Yes, yes. So the next thing is enable save button in all transactions. So this feature is something where there are some pages in QuickBooks where they do not allow you to save a transaction with just a normal save. So what we do is we add you can tell it's a RightTool thing because it has that red color from RightTool that says save right here. And it will just do the exact feature that you would expect if you had it inside of QuickBooks, where it will just save the file. So just something that pops up. Now there's multiple screens. It's not just the deposit page, but this is kind of a good example of what that is. The next thing is the chart of accounts header with new button. So I'm going to go to the chart of accounts. And inside of here, you will notice that there is a new button that shows up inside of this area that says action. And the reason we added that is because in most versions of QuickBooks, except for apparently an update they made recently, this header will actually scroll with the screen and make it so you can press that new button without having to scroll all the way up to the top. However, QuickBooks has changed the header of this. So the point of it is a little dulled, but that is what that is doing. The next thing is copy pagination buttons to the top. So this is something you'll see if you go to the example I like to use is the customers page. You will notice that there is big red buttons that show up at the top of the page so that when you're scrolling through a list of things, it will actually show it at the top as well as the bottom so you don't have to scroll through every time. Especially helpful when you have those 300 page size long lists. Next up, we have the transaction payee detail link. So we have two payee detail links, but this one is specifically where if I go into, let's say, an expense, and I create a payee here, let's say I want to go to ADP, or not a create, but let's say I have it. I will have this link right here that says payee details, and that will actually open up into the vendor detail for whatever was selected. So you'll see this will now populate the ADP vendor detail section just right here for me, making it so that it's just easy peasy to get to here and see the details of this vendor in the past. And then finally, short-term QuickBooks Online enhancements is something we will go over, but we are going to wait till the end of the webinar for this. And none of the stuff in QuickBooks short-term enhancements are going to be a part of the exam. This is just informational for people who want to know about it. Oh, and then Hector, you are muted.
Yeah, the reason that feature is a catch-all feature that we use to kind of fix quick things that we know QuickBooks is like sort of in transition of fixing. That's why it wouldn't be in the exam, but there's also a lot of things that are interesting on this.
Yeah.
And just to clarify, every single thing that we have covered so far and will cover in today's 2-hour webinar is the free edition. So none of the things that we have covered, so to speak, require the paid edition. This is 100% in the free edition of RightTool. Now we're
And
gonna
something else, by the way, on that is that everything that is above the white line on this left side of the options page is a free feature. So it'll say pro next to it if you're in a pro section. So just be aware.
Yeah, great point. All right, so the next thing we're going to talk about is tab management. Okay, there's a lot of things to cover here. We're going to see how much we can cover them in maybe 20 minutes or so. I'm going to turn everything off here for a second, just so we kind of know what happens if nothing from tabs management is turned on. And the first thing you will notice is that in whichever page of QuickBooks you're in, you won't be seeing the option for tabs, or manage tabs. So you have to turn on manage tabs, which is turned on by default, but you have to make sure that's on if you want to see that tab section that we covered earlier. That's called enable manage tabs. You turn that on. Now, RT defaults to manage tab is a modification of the behavior at RightTool. So as you switch from page to page, instead of staying in the favorite section, it goes into manage tabs. Now, the idea behind this is that it mimics a QuickBooks desktop feature called the open window list, which basically keeps track of all the tabs you have open, or in QuickBooks or desktop, all the windows you have open. So if you turn on RT defaults to manage tabs, and this might be something that's super useful to you, you're not going to be seeing the favorites, your favorite shortcuts by default. It doesn't matter what you click on or where you go. So for example, let's say I go and go into expense, or let's do it with new tabs here. Let me just go back into my settings here, and I'm going to turn on one other feature called RT shortcuts open a new tab. So what this does, and these two things are used in combination generally. So one is defaulting to manage tabs. So that's if every time you switch pages, you want to be in manage tabs instead of being on favorites. And then the other one is RT shortcuts opens in new tab. That's if I click on anything in RT shortcuts, instead of staying in the same tab like it was doing earlier, anything I click on will open up a new tab. So right now it's set up so it all stays in the same tab. So no matter what I click on, it stays in the same tab, right? So if I switch this to RT shortcut opens a new tab. I'm gonna save and refresh. So the shortcut, so the extension refreshes. So now as I reload, as I click on anything in RightTool from favorites, regardless of what it is, it'll open in a new tab. But then the trick is, because I used it in combination, is, when I was in this page, I was in favorites first, and I clicked on something, and a new tab opened, and it'll default back to manage tabs. So that's kind of the point, is that regardless of what you're doing in terms of switching from favorites to tabs, if you keep opening new pages, you will always default to manage tabs. So if you want to switch across different screens or different tabs you have in QuickBooks, you can do them easily to this feature, and you don't have to click on manage tabs to then see all the open tabs. This is an area where Mark and I have a fundamental difference in opinion in terms of the best way to navigate QuickBooks. Mark very much likes a single tab navigation approach. I like the multiple tab navigation approach. So what we did was, to marry both points of view, is we gave you tons of customizability in terms of how you want this to behave as you use it. The other really important feature that we have here is automatically close new transactions. So this is actually a tricky one. When you turn this one on, and the new screen or the new tab you're opening essentially is a new transaction. So for example, if I go to invoice, and through this process, I create an invoice. It does start with a new tab. As you can tell, I'm back to the original tab I was in, and now I'm in the invoice tab. What this does is it actually adds a little tag in the URL here that says RT close. And we actually know, like RightTool knows, that any URL that has that tag added at the end, that if there is a save and close action, it will close that tab as well, right? Because it wouldn't be useful for that to close and then you have one more tab open if you created a new transaction. Again, that's the kind of the purpose of this, is to behave a little bit like QuickBooks Desktop. When you used to click on save and close, it closed the window for you, and it didn't keep the invoice open or whatever new transaction you had. So that's the point of that. Then we have close tabs on company change. So I won't demonstrate this, but essentially, if you are in the accountant edition of QuickBooks Online and you manage multiple companies, and you're swapping from client A to client B to client C, and you have a whole bunch of tabs open, and you don't want all the tabs to stay open and get that weird gray screen that shows, something's wrong, there's an error. What this will do is it'll send a signal to close all the open tabs and just keep the one tab open. Now, for some people want to keep the open tabs, and then after switching companies, they're just going to want to refresh. So they'll just refresh them and kind of get you back into the same screen that you were in on the last company. So it's really up to you whether you want one or the other. Now, these two are really important: the audit log new tab and the transaction journal new tab. I'm going to turn this on, both of these on, because these actually work sort of contextually very similarly. And the purpose of this is, if you're looking at a transaction, an invoice, a check, whatever it is. So let's pull up, we're going to pull up an invoice. So let's go into create invoice and pull up an invoice here, whichever it is. And let's say I'm inspecting this invoice, I'm looking at it, I'm working on it, I'm printing, I'm adding stuff, editing, but I really quickly wanted to see the audit log, or really quickly wanted to see the transaction journal. Here under more actions that is built into QuickBooks Online, we have the audit history and the transaction journal. The way QuickBooks works now is, if you don't have these turned on in RightTool, they open on top of the invoice. So sometimes I want to open a new tab so I can keep my invoice open, don't lose track of anything that I'm doing or editing, and then quickly look at my transaction journal and just exit out, and then I'm back to my invoice exactly where I was, unedited, unchanged. Same thing with the audit history. Essentially, all we're doing is we're overriding it, so it opens up in a new tab instead of opening on the same tab. So those two are really important and valuable. So these two are usually used in combination. The next one here is called match tab names. Now, this was a tricky one because QuickBooks actually, sometimes it's pretty good and sometimes it's really bad at naming tabs. So we'll give you an example. Let's say I'm going to go into projects. I click on projects, and we're going to see what that looks like. Let's go into projects, see what that looks like. So QuickBooks in this case did a pretty good job and called this projects. But if I'm going to see if I click on something that it doesn't have a really good name, and QuickBooks is getting better and better at naming the tabs better. And we could be at a point where QuickBooks has been deeply inspired by the RightTool feature for renaming tabs, where it looks like a lot of these tabs are
There's
actually
2 pages specifically that we do this. It's going to be in classic reports. Modern reports, we still have an issue with it.
right.
But in classic reports and in the reconcile pages are specifically where we do the
Where we
tab
add more
name
value.
changing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So let's take a look at those. So let's go into the chart of accounts, for example, and I'm gonna go into one of the registers. So when you go into a register, it just says register, okay? And if you go to reconcile, and let's say we'll get started and just do a regular reconciliation process. It just says, well, in this case, it just says register because it didn't know to switch to reconcile. So as QuickBooks is getting better and better at naming the tabs, they haven't done it 100%. So match tab names is going to pick up the slack, and it's going to improve the way these tabs are called. So for example, if I am sitting on the register page, it would actually say rec for register. I mean, it will say rec for reconcile, and then give you the name of the account. So if you have 2 or 3 reconcile pages open, all different accounts, you could quickly know which account you're in, particularly if you are looking at the tab management feature here. So for example, let's say I'm going to go ahead and go into the chart of accounts, and I'm going to go into one of the registers here. So what's really nice is, okay, I got my register, so called REG for register, and then the name of the account. So, and at the same time, for the tab management feature, you get very clear, you get a clear name for the register name, or the account name of the register, and the account name of the reconcile. So these two add a lot of value from that perspective. And Mark mentioned the reports as well. So when you go into, let's say, a classic report, let's go into balance sheet. Instead of just saying report in the top, we will say balance sheet. So we're kind of more purposeful in terms of that. So instead of just saying it will just say like the name of the company or the last screen you were in, it would actually say balance sheet. So we're gonna pick up the slack on the classic reports tab naming, on the register, and on the reconcile page. And there might be other places too, but for the purposes of what you need to know right now, those are probably the ones that most matter. Then we have report enhanced drill down. So this is a feature that that we created many years ago, and QuickBooks has been improving a little bit of the workflow in the internal QuickBooks reporting system, prior to RightTool existing. But the idea behind this is, if I'm inspecting a particular report, that if I click on a drill down, that it doesn't reset my page. So if I click on this here, the challenge with this is, especially with the modern reports, is that it'll load over the page that I'm in. And sometimes when I'm inspecting a report, and I am in a particular area of the report, I scroll to a particular area, I kind of don't want to drill down on the same tab. And on the modern reports, we're having a tough time, making sure that the reports enhanced drill down sticks. But we originally built this for the classic report. So I'm going to try one more time. I'm in a modern report for QuickBooks Online. I'm going to click on any of the areas I want to drill down in. And like I said, modern reports, we have been able to override that. But if we were in the classic reports, so enhanced report drill down, only working on the classic reports. If you're in a classic report and you click on the drill down, it won't load onto itself. It will open a new tab with that drill down. So one of our goals is getting a lot of these classic report features that we're able to do well with classic reports, to get them working on enhanced reports as well. So for the purposes of what you need to know is, anything we do on the reporting side, 99% is going to be on classic reports, just because they give us a lot more flexibility. You want to add anything to that, Mark, on the report enhanced drill down?
Only other thing is that a kind of hidden feature of RightTool that's related to this is, if you turn reports enhanced drill down off, RightTool will actually still make it so in classic reports, you can right click on a link and it will actually be able to open it in a new tab that way as well, which is not something that's a default behavior of QuickBooks.
Yeah, good point. So this open link in new tab, open new window, incognito window, open link as whatever it is, these, or copy the link address, these are not available when you don't turn on enhanced report drill down. Yeah. Completely forgotten about that. Then we have a close sidebar after clicking on a favorite. It's an interesting one too. And this all kind of has to do with tab management. So what that means is right now, and actually it might be more contextual to not have the screen default to manage tabs. So we'll have it default back to favorites. So for example, if I am looking at my favorites here and I click on any of these links, it'll open up a new tab, but instead of the new tab keeping RightTool open, the RightTool navigation bar, it will automatically collapse it. So if you're using RightTool to navigate and you don't want RightTool to be open, that setting is there. Again, very, very granular way of changing your experience when it comes to the left navigation bar, the new tabs, closing the tabs, or what shows up in default in the left navigation bar. The next one is clickable recurring transaction names. So I'm going to save that. And then we're going to go into recurring transaction screen. I'm hoping that this file has some recurring transactions. If not, we can create one. Let's go into recurring. Let's go into recurring transactions.
It's at the top there. Yeah.
Right here. Okay. So here he'll have my list of my recurring transactions. And what we've done is we created a hyperlink to these, right? So instead of you clicking on the drop-down menu and click on use, because it's, in my opinion, in our opinion, way too many clicks. If you click on that, it basically uses it. So instead of having to click on the drop-down and use, it's just a faster way of enabling, activating the use of the recurring transactions. The next one is deposits new tab. Deposits new tab. So that's when we are in the deposit screen. So I'm going to go into bank deposits, and a very similar workflow here is we're looking at the deposits, we're looking at all these numbers, and we want to inspect any of these transactions. So one of the frustrations that we're trying to get rid of is you clicking on this and your bank deposit screen sort of going away, especially if you're in the middle of typing things here in the memo and you don't want to lose the stuff that you're working on. So you can click on any of these here and it'll open up that transaction in a new tab. Let me just go make sure that's turned on and then click on save and refresh so we can go back and see that. But that was the idea that you kind of saw, you know, that could be frustrating. You're looking at a deposit. Let's go back into deposit and you click on something and you kind of lose where you were. So let's go back and open the deposit again. And again, instead of losing where you are, you click on any of the transactions that are there and it opens that transaction in a new tab, making it super easy for you to inspect the transaction or edit. So if I want to change the transaction, whatever it is, and then when I click on record and close, we also know and understand implicitly that if you're going to edit a transaction after you clicked on it, you want to close that tab so that tab won't stay open. Okay, so that way you go back into the deposit screen, you didn't lose your place, and you don't have an extra tab just sitting there. And the last one is auto open bank feeds when switching files. So this has a two modes. The first mode is the first one you turn on, auto open bank feeds when switching files. Essentially, when you switch from one company file to the other. So for example, I'm in Quality Build Construction and I switch over to Hector Garcia Corporation, it will switch over. And after it switches, it will all go straight into bank feeds. And the reason for that is because many people have told us that that's the place that they go to the most, the principal area they go into QuickBooks. That way it saves you that extra click, so to speak, to go into bank feeds. Now, other people have asked, Hector, that's not the place I go to. The place I go to, let's say, is the balance sheet. Okay, fine. So grab the balance sheet, move it all the way to the top, make whatever your principal default homepage that you want. Like, what do you want to see first when you first log into QuickBooks Online? Make it your number one shortcut. Then after you make it your number one shortcut, go back into the settings here and override it with this subsetting called switch to first right tool favorite instead. That's what that means. So whatever's number one, you switch it to that. So now that we've done this, we told it that our balance sheet is our first most important shortcut to go straight there when we switch company files. So I'm going to switch over back to the construction company. And what we're expecting is for the switch to happen. And as soon as QuickBooks loads, it will go straight into the balance sheet. Okay, and that's kind of the idea behind that is that, again, you have a total customizable experience in terms of what is the first thing that you want to see when you go into your QuickBooks Online. All right, the next one's going to be error prevention. And what we'll do is I'll give Mark sharing power. So Mark can go over all the settings in error prevention.
Sounds like a plan. Close everything out here and share screen too.
And Mark, could you check your microphone settings and make sure there's nothing that says dynamic or automatically change the volume? I would mean on the Zoom settings, just because your audio seems to like come in and out. So just to make sure there isn't something that's dynamically changing the volume. And if you can't, I'll take over and I could do those as well.
Oh, I see. It actually was just using the wrong microphone, I think. Is it better
Okay.
now?
Yeah, a million times better. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. There. Have the fancy microphone and then turns out it doesn't want to use the fancy microphone. Uh, so error prevention. This area is focused mostly on things that are kind of making it so either when you're doing work, you can find things faster, or when somebody else is doing work, they don't mess something up. So first thing is void memo automation. So what this is let's say I go to an existing expense. Let's see if I could, yeah. So let's say I go to an existing expense. And once I'm in here, I say I want to avoid this transaction. I click void and I need to refresh the page after I do. Every time you change a setting, you need to refresh the page. That is just part of making it so that RightTool does not slow down your QuickBooks Online any more than it needs to. So I'm going to click void. And once I do that, I need to go back to the transaction. And in the memo, it will say voided. It'll say what the original amount you voided it was, and it will say this was marked void by whoever it was that's currently logged in on this page. Now, some people are like, I don't want it to show my email or like associated with the QuickBooks account. That is why we have this custom void memo automation name. So if you are somebody who wants it to say a specific thing for when you void it, or if you want it to just be like by uh, let's see, the RightTool team or something like that, then you can actually add that in as the name here, and then where it says void by marketmonkb.com, it will say voided by the RightTool team. So you can use that to change whatever you change that to whatever you want to use. The next thing I want to show is the show journal normal balances in journal entries. Ignore the fact that it says new journal entries. So what this is a feature, one of the very first features we worked on. Let's say I go to a journal entry and I'm working on this and I have to refresh the page. So let's say you're inside of a journal entry and you're trying to correct a report, let's say, to have the correct numbers on it. Then one thing that we have here is there's a button at the top that looks like an arrow going up and an arrow going down. So what will happen is you click on that button and we'll take just a moment to get the account info. But once we do, you will see it will have a green arrow going up in whichever is the normal balance for that account, and a red arrow going down for whatever is not the normal balance of that account. So you don't have to do the thing where you save a report or save a journal entry, open the report, and then make adjustments after you remember which one it was supposed to be, debit or credit. So that is what that feature is doing. The next thing that we want to show is copy info to memo in transactions. This has two subsettings on it. So this has prepend bank memo and also copy into the line descriptions. You'll see what I'm referring to once I go into this. So I'm just going to find a transaction that came in from the bank feed. So let's just go to this New York taxi. So if you have a setting or a memo inside of this page that does not match up with what came in from the bank feed, so as you can see here, the bank detail is not the same as what this is. If I refresh this page, there will be a thing underneath the memo that says whatever the actual bank detail was from the online banking match. So I'm just going to click on this F45 training. And once I do that, it will actually add that to the memo of the transaction. And it should add it to the description as well because I have this copy memo line into descriptions. Of course, every once in a while, something wants to mess with me and not work the way it should. But in theory, this F45 training should also be put into the beginning of the description right here. So it should have said F45 and then put a
You also have the manual button that says copy memo to descriptions in the bottom.
yes.
So you
We
can
also have this as well. Copy
do
memo
the
to
other way.
description.
Yeah. Yeah. You
Yeah.
can, so you can go in any direction you want.
Yeah, exactly. These
And
are technically part of a different feature, but
and copy text to memo is useful also because as you may know, QuickBooks is deprecating tags. In this particular version, this particular file you're seeing, tags is not even nowhere to be found.
yeah.
But for people that still have tags and they're not going to be using tags anymore because tags is being disabled, you can have that tag being copied into the memo as well, just in case you want to retain records of the tags. QuickBooks is killing the tags feature.
Yeah. And then copy names to memo should get that customer and project. I'm just going to assume that QuickBooks updated something recently. But yes, it'll take that customer project side right here and add it into the memo as well. The next thing is transaction item lock. So this is actually a good page to show this on. Inside of QuickBooks, by default, if you have an item or a product or service that you have on a transaction, you will know that it will automatically fill in some default information. But let's say that you have your own custom information inside of this line, and then you need to change the product or service. If I do this normally, it will remove everything. But if I want to say custom description, and I'm just going to close that, and then I'm going to come over here and press this lock icon. You'll notice that this little button turns from red to black. And then if I change this product or service, it will basically everything will reset once I change the product or service, but then bring the description, quantity, and rate back to whatever it was that you originally had inside of that area. So you don't have to do the thing where you copy everything to a separate line. The next thing is copy bill memo to bill payments. So I'm going to go to a bill and I am going to open up this one. So let's say that you have like an important bill memo. So important memo I need to see on the payment. If you click mark as paid from the bill, this is admittedly the only place we could do it from. If you click mark as paid, don't leave without saving. I'll save it first. One time only, mark it. So I'm going to click mark as paid. What should happen, assuming that the world wants to work right, I'm going to refresh the page. Oh, I didn't reload the page, did I? I'm going to just turn all of these on so the next time I reload the page, it'll be the last time I need to. So I'm going to reload this bill and click on mark as paid. And it should bring the memo into here at the bottom. Here you can see where it happened. It got that it copied it over for you, so you didn't have to do the extra steps there.
It's important to add that there's no other way to do this retroactively and fix transactions that didn't have the memo already. This workflow only works when you actually click on mark as paid. If you already have the bill payment created, we can go backwards and fetch that. Now that's for now. We actually know the mechanism to do that, so that's something that we could build in the future for us to look into the memo of that build and kind of bring that over. But for the time being, it needs to be with that workflow. The nice thing is, in the future, when we do bring something in where we can be at the bill payment level already and pull them, is we could probably even pull memos from multiple bills. So that's something that's more on the pipeline. You know, all you need to know for right now is you got to start at the bill and click on mark paid for that to move.
Yeah, exactly. We are going to skip 1099 account mapping enhancements for the purposes of the exam because it is changed every year and QuickBooks doesn't even have like the 1099 stuff open at the moment. And we're also skipping over untransfer button. But we are keeping that around. We just need to bring it back. So that means the next thing we are going to go into is Google Memo link in bank feeds. So a very simple feature. I'm going to go to the bank page. Once I'm inside of here, I'm going to open up a transaction of any sort. And you will see that there will be a button. And actually, I will go ahead and mention that we have Google Memo link as well as search with Perplexity. These are both two sides of the same coin, essentially. So I will show both of them at the same time here. So you can click on this little red link here that says Google Memo, and it'll just open a small window for you that has whatever it is that was in the bank description by default populated for you. Now, if you have one of those descriptions that has a billion different things inside of it and you don't really need all of it, you just really only need one small part of it, instead of pressing Google Memo, I can just highlight whatever it is I want to search for and then press Google Memo, and it will only show what it is that I have highlighted. Just to show you what the Perplexity one is, this is the more fancy version basically of Google, where it uses AI to kind of give you more of a detailed information about what this could be. And it will give you this whole description as well as links to back up what it's saying. So that's the main difference. So it's just a personal preference thing when it comes to Perplexity versus Google.
Also, keep in mind that Perplexity may have usage limitations where Google doesn't. So if you don't have a Perplexity account, this will work under the free search. But there could be, like, if you're doing like 1,000 of them, there could be a point where they say, okay, you could do no more Perplexity searches, or you have to log in and have an actual paid Perplexity account. So we just link to it. We don't necessarily use our Perplexity account or anything like that to work it.
Yeah. One other thing is that if you are somebody who likes Bing over Google Memo or Google, then you can use Bing as well if with that side option. Let's see here, more details in bank feeds. This is where you can actually already see it inside of this page. QuickBooks by default will give you just the guess of what QuickBooks has. But RightTool will give you the actual full bank detail that comes in from the bank itself. So here you can see this says Maple, but the actual full bank detail is that Maple Street Biscuit Company. So that is kind of giving an example of how that red text is working inside of that page. Another thing that will happen inside of this page with this feature, with the more details in bank feeds, is anytime you put something in parentheses in a bank name, it will show up as red text over top of that bank card in the bank feed. So here I put 0289 inside of parentheses. So now 0289 will show up here. It does not have to be a number. It can be text, and it can be as long as you want. It's just that if it gets too long, it looks bad. So that is something as well that you can do. If you ever have like a parent credit card with a bunch of sub credit cards, it can be really useful for differentiating between all of those.
Yeah, last 4 digits is the most logical thing that we use, but sometimes you can put this, personal card or spouse's card or a kid's card, or like anything that contextually means one thing, not the other when it comes to categorizing it. You do whatever you, as long as you put it in parentheses, that's what's going to show up in there. And again, keep in mind that whatever you put in parentheses, that still shows in the balance sheet report, it still shows in the chart of accounts. So obviously you do something that's both logical from an accounting perspective and also logical from a bookkeeping data entry perspective.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, the next thing is the new transaction button in the banking and reconciliation page. I need to add this to the new version of the bank feed, but to show this feature, I'm going to just go ahead and go to the reconcile page. So what will happen is when I am inside of this reconcile page, I'm gonna start reconciling, is that you will notice that there will be a button at the top here that has a plus expense, or depending on what kind of account you're in, it might say something different, as well as this drop down right here. Just basically allowing you to quickly from this page create a credit card or credit card credit expense, journal entry, what have you. And as well, we will also go in and we will put in the correct date as well as the correct account for the payment account for you. So it automatically fills in these two things right here when you click on that transaction, or when you click on the button. So just something to make it a little bit quicker when you're working inside of QuickBooks from the reconcile page. And then finally, the reconciled transaction indicator. That is, I'm going to go to the register and I'm going to search for only reconciled transactions here. So reconcile, apply. So this is basically just if you go into a transaction of any kind, and it doesn't have to be from the register, it's just the easiest way for me to find an example, is you'll now see at the top left here, there will be a link that says reconciled at the top if something has been. And if you click on that link as well, it will go into basically a transaction journal report that will show you which sides of the transaction have been reconciled. That's only really important if it's, and Hector, you can go into more detail on that about when it's important to see which side is reconciled versus which side is not.
Yeah, so there are transactions that affect more than one balance sheet account. So for example, a transfer between bank account A, bank account B, or a credit card payment between, bank account to the credit card, or you pay a loan, right? So at any point in time that more than one reconcilable account is being affected, bank, credit card, loan, that sort of thing, the reconciliation indicator only tells us whether or not there's any reconciled side. It doesn't tell us where is the right, the source or the destination. You would have to go into this report to see which is the side that's cleared to decide whether or not you'll delete this transaction or modify it. That's the point of this feature, is that you're better informed prior to deleting the feature, because if the transaction is reconciled, you need to know that if I delete this transaction, I might mess up a reconciliation. So unfortunately, from this screen, we can't tell you whether it's the source, the payment account, or the category, the one that's reconciled. That's what the detailed report will be for.
Yeah, exactly. And that covers it for error prevention. And I don't think, Hector, we decided we're not going to put anything in classic report on the exam, right?
Yes, we are not going to put classic reports on the exam because there's a possibility that classic reports get killed. But we decided that if there was going to be time, we'll go over classic reports anyway. Okay, so we're going to go over classic reports, and I'll take over the screen now. And there was one question on one of the features. I think it was error prevention, and it was more details in the bank feeds. So I'm gonna showcase that really quick. Let me see if I have a bank feeds option I could use here, and then maybe you can switch over if I don't have a bank feeds ready to go. Let me check for a second, see if I have any transactions here to showcase. Okay, so this duality where you get the original bank information and the QuickBooks cleaned up bank information. The question was, in the gear menu, there's an option that says show full bank description. So show full bank description will show you the original bank description. So if you turn that on, technically you don't need the additional RightTool feature to give you the additional details. So if you have this turned on already, you actually don't need that feature. Okay, so that's only when you have it turned off and you want to see both what QuickBooks attempted to call it and what the original bank called it. So this additional bank detail is most useful when this checkbox is turned off, but that's available there. The other question is, once a transaction has been posted, so I'm going to post a couple of transactions, they're only showing in this pending stage. So the question is, if I am in the posted page, does it show up there? The answer is yes, they do show up in the posted page as well. And on the excluded page, I actually haven't tested, but let's go ahead and try these. So might as well just answer that question really quick. So in the excluded side, does it show up? Yes. So they actually show up both in excluded and posted in addition to pending. I think we added that recently, if I remember correctly. Okay, so let's go into classic reports. And as we mentioned, this part won't be in the exam just because this is so volatile, but it's really, really useful to have it. So I'm going to do like Mark, I'm going to turn everything on. That way I don't have to refresh the screen every single time. And as this suggests, classic reports only works in classic reports. So none of these features, with the exception of one little one, is working only in classic reports. And it is our goal to bring those to modern reports. Let's start with export reports to CSV, and I'm going to do exclude headers. I'm also going to click a split out account number. So we did an earlier demo on splitting out account numbers in a journal entry, and it wasn't working. So it's possible that this little piece isn't working, and it's going to be part of the next patch. But let's say I'm going to report here. So hidden in the export button right here, so you click on the little icon that looks like a little tray and an arrow pointing up. There are two extra features that we added here, which they're actually tied together: export to CSV and copy to clipboard. As the name suggests, copy to clipboard is for me to literally copy to the clipboard and then maybe open up a Excel or something like that. Let me open up a new Excel file for you. I'll bring it here to this side, and we'll make this a little bit bigger. Okay, and then
fun fact, this feature was originally designed as a way to put stuff into ChatGPT if you wanted to.
Correct. So now the way we paste it, it gets a little bit tricky just because it's a CSV paste. ChatGPT will catch this well. If you copy and paste into here, you may have to do some splitting of columns using the commas and stuff like that. We could probably work on detecting on whether or not this is going to be an export into Excel. It gets a little bit tricky just pasting raw data in Excel. You may have to go to Paste Special and do something like this to try to get a more cleaner export. But that's all we're doing, is we're exporting the raw data that it could be read by Excel or Google Sheets or ChatGPT. But then the other one is export to CSV. And obviously, if you are going to open it, in fact, in Excel, that's going to be the best way to do it. Export it to CSV and then open up the clean version here. And the CSV version already has all the splits. Okay, so have all the data in here. Now, it's not formatted so that the totals are not bolded or anything like that. So you have to keep in track that you can't just add all these numbers and they will make sense, because it's basically a unformatted export, no formulas, including the subtotals. So this could be for any sort of manipulation you want to do, an analysis in which the formulas don't matter and the subtotals don't matter. So that's what that feature is for. Now, QuickBooks does have a built-in export to Excel feature. You can use that, and if that works for you, then great. Nothing else for us to talk about.
To be clear, the export to CSV, the reason we have that feature is because of the other features you'll see coming up. QuickBooks will not export to Excel with like what your report visually looks like on the screen. It will only export like the QuickBooks default report. And so we put the export CSV so that if you make edits to how the page looks, it'll continue to have that in there. Oh, you're muted.
And one of the common reasons why people want to export to Excel or CSV is because they want to change the font size or the font color or the font style. QuickBooks, unfortunately, does not have a built-in mechanism to make what you're seeing visually customizable or more appeal. Like that's the font that you have, that's the font size you have. When you export to PDF, it's whatever QuickBooks gives you. And QuickBooks is the one that creates the PDF file in the back end. So we cannot intersect that, change that, or modify it. The only way to modify, again, things like font size and formatting has to be by exporting to Excel and doing the formatting in there. Okay, the other features we're going to look at is the hide sub rows and hide sub columns. So when we pull up a report here, let's go into the balance sheet. Okay, well, I'm going to start with the sub rows. So there's the hide sub rows or collapse the sub rows. The purpose of that is you click on that and it basically runs through the collapse for you. It collapses everything for you. If I click on it one more time, it collapses even further, even tighter. If I click one more time, it expands fully. So that's the idea, is that I have the ability to kind of play with the expansions of the accounts and sub-accounts, essentially clicking on this little triangle for you, so you don't have to click one by one. So that's what that one's for. Now I'm going to switch over to a profit and loss instead. And
I can actually show this one if you want.
Okay.
If you're talking about the sub rows.
Well, I'm going to attempt it on this file and then we'll switch over to you. Okay.
Gotcha.
So here we go by class. So let's say, for example, I'm going to pull up a P&L by class, and this works with customers too. And the way this particular file is set up is there's a parent class called labor, and then under labor, there's labor cost, owner's labor, subcontract labor, and then there's total labor. So what's confusing about this is that this is the parent class right here, labor, and then this is the total of that parent class. Then I have another one called non-labor, and then under we have materials, other jobs, overhead, and then another non-labor, and then we have one called revenue. So what happens is it's just it's very difficult to kind of keep track of, okay, which is a category, which is a subcategory. QuickBooks does a really bad job at displaying hierarchy when it comes to classes, subclasses, customers, sub-customers, and projects, or locations, sub-locations, when doing, for example, a P&L by that class or by that location. So, and then to add one more additional piece of context, I'm going to go into all this here, and then I'm going to pull up the class list so you can visually see the structure here. So we have labor, then we have our subclasses, then I have non-labor, then our subclasses. So that's exactly what we mean by that structure. So when I go back into my P&L, and then I'm looking at a P&L by class, visually it could be a little bit confusing. So we added these options called subcolumns, sub-subcolumns, and parent columns, and net zeros. So what we do is if we click on net zero, it gets rid of any columns that doesn't have any numerical number. So as long as it has a 0 or nothing on it, it gets rid of it. That way we're not being confused with columns that just contain data, which basically just takes more space on the screen. That's one. The other one is with subcolumns. What happens is any sub class that's under a parent class gets suppressed or hidden. And the only thing you see is the grand total of that parent category. This is probably the most optimal way to seeing a P&L by class, a P&L by location, but because maybe you don't want to see the columns, and then that we make them red to just remind you that RightTool modified this report. Now, if I do subcolumns, that doesn't work in this case because I don't have so much layers of structure. But if I had multiple layers, a column, a subcolumn, and a subcolumn, it will do those at that level. And there's also get rid of the parent columns. So in this case, if I have a parent column that contains no information, it gets rid of the subtotal of that. So what's interesting is if you do something like this, then you can export to Excel and actually the math. So by adding all the numbers across the board, it will give you the total. Whereas if we keep the parent column subtotals, it wouldn't, because that would be the challenge. So that's kind of the cycle that it is. And Mark, was there something else you wanted to show with the demo of this, or you think we covered all the bases?
I mean, the only thing that it really needs to be seen on that is just the sub columns. Anything, I can show it real quick, actually.
Yeah, okay. I'll stop sharing so you can show it. And then while you're at it, also show the export, because QuickBooks creates reports from their server, and regardless of what you do in RightTool to modify what you're viewing, when you hit print, QuickBooks' version of print, it's gonna send the original report. So we cannot override or change the way it prints. That's just
Yeah.
the way QuickBooks does it. So the closest thing to that is we export it for you, and then you can open that in Excel and then format it. But unfortunately, if you want to print our version, just right now, we just don't have a solution for that.
Yeah. So just to kind of give you the example of the sub columns,
You want
if
to
you,
share your screen first.
oh, am I not sharing? Let me
No.
refresh then. Let's see. Boop. Sharing screen, screen two, share. Is it showing for you now or is it not showing
Not
for
yet.
you?
Not yet.
That's weird. Okay, I think everybody else can see it. So it might be because of the fact that I shared it before you stopped sharing.
Okay, now I see it. Thank
Gotcha.
you.
So let me zoom in on this. So yeah, okay. So subcolumns. So what that is you press this button. What it will have is that parent class. The total parent class will show up, but then anything that is a parent class of its own will also be hidden inside of here. So like we have this commercial is going to be a thing that is, or no, it's not. The point is, it's a thing that somebody, Greg Boston specifically asked for, was the ability to see the subtotals inside of a class.
It's hard to visualize unless you know the data of the company file.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
yeah, so if you have up to 3 layers of classes, that gives you one more layer that you can collapse.
Yeah. And then yeah, finally, I'm actually going to do this with just the regular subcolumns because it's just so much cleaner looking. Uh, is that is the reason why we do the export CSV, because now if I export this to CSV, you will see that it will have all or all the columns that I have visually displayed on the page instead of every single column broken out. So as you can see here, it
Right.
does not have like everything broken out. It's only what you see on the page, which is the main draw of the CSV.
Yeah. The number one feedback on this is I want to be able to print this collapse format. Unfortunately, that's just not technically feasible unless we develop an entire printing software, report printing and formatting software, and that's not what we're doing at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so
yeah.
we're still in the sub columns preset. There's a lot of other things to cover on the reports. Do you want to continue and cover them? So the next one would be default print into landscape.
Yeah, this one is a very easy feature to show. So I'll go ahead and show this one, and I will show, yeah, I'll show this one, and then I'll show the next one. Uh, so auto print in landscape, I mean, it does exactly what it sounds like it will do. If I go into this report, now admittedly, it does need to be classic view. I'm going to go into this report, and then I'm going to click on print. And it will automatically change it from normally it will print inside of portrait view, so like it's more vertically inclined, but then it'll change it automatically to landscape, so it's got more space going left to right. As you can see here, it's a very large report, so it doesn't print super well. So yeah, that is what that one does. I'm going to skip we're not going to show the totals in sales tax liability reports on this particular call. It will not be a part of the exam. But I'm going to show auto switch to classic view. This is one that a couple of people like a lot. I don't know if QuickBooks does, but people generally do. So I'm going to turn on auto switch to classic view. All that does is if you enter a report and it automatically tries to take you into a modern report, like this one's trying to do right here, it will, as soon as the modern report loads, it will click on the switch to classic view button. I did not click that myself, to be clear, and switch you back over into classic. So it's just a way to save yourself the click if you're somebody who really hates the modern view. It can be really helpful for this. There are some reports that will not work for, but most of the major reports that will still work. So, yes. And then I'm going to, skip tax liability report, and I'm going to skip customer P&L link, but I'm coming back to that after report presets, just because it makes more sense logically to go ahead and do the report presets.
One thing I do want to add, on the auto switch to classic view is a little bit of a double-edged sword, because QuickBooks has been killing certain classic versions of the reports. So you may have a report that loads and automatically switches to classic view, but the classic view has been killed. So if you see that behavior work a little strange, we want to turn off the auto switch to classic view. That's just a turbulence that we're dealing with at the moment. I believe that the rest of 2025 and 2026 will be a very interesting, unstable time for QuickBooks Classic view reports, just because we don't know which reports they're killing, if they're doing like sort of dissecting one at a time, or just gonna wait, keep them all and wait and just kind of like disable the entire Classic view feature. So if that works a little glitchy, turn it off, and you may have to deal with the modern version of the report sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. And then for the next thing, I'm gonna, just to make it so this is a little bit cleaner to look at, display columns by total only. And inside of here, so reports preset button is a setting that we have where you can say, I want to see my reports, and you can kind of come in here and say, these are all the things I want my reports to do. So I want my my negative numbers to be red and in parentheses. I want to have it so it's preset to show, or to not show 0 rows and columns. It also, we have some things in here like total, sort by total. If inside of certain types of report that actually have a total, the ability to have a total column, we can sort by total. We can preset the columns we actually want to show inside of here. So if we want to display it by months or classes or something like that, we can have this be automatically set. So I'm just going to say months inside of this, cash basis. I'm going to skip over a lot of these, but you have a lot of options here. The one thing I will kind of put an extra emphasis on is this report preset date, which is pretty cool because we have an option here called rolling X months. So if you're somebody who likes to see everything on a rolling month basis, you can come on here and be like, oh, I want to see the past 6 months back, instead of like QuickBooks has only the option of uh, like half, or like the quarters or half the year or something like that. So I'm going to just do all this, and then I'm going to say refresh the page. And then once I refresh the page, I'm going to wait for it to do its thing where it wants to try and go into modern report, but then it's going to try to push it back into classic. And I'm going to click on run presets. And you can see here that QuickBooks wants to fight me tooth and nail, but that's okay because it will switch back to classic reports and have everything set up the way that I want to. So it has the negative numbers in red like this. It'll have displayed columns by months, and you can see here it's doing the 6 months back when it's doing the math for this. So just like kind of cool stuff like that you can have preset whenever you click on this button in the top left corner. So yeah.
So let's do a customer P&L link, and then let's close up the certification webinar.
Yeah. So the last thing is, as Hector said, customer P&L link. So I'm just going to go into a customer, and this works inside of vendors as well, just to be clear. Probably need to change the name for that purpose. And so I'm going to go into AAA construction, and you'll notice at the top right of the page, there will be a button here that says customer P&L. So whenever I'm inside of a customer detail, I click on that. It will go and open a profit and loss report that only has the transactions that are related to the customer or vendor that you clicked open from. So it can kind of be like having a project profitability type thing going on, available to you. Now, there's one caveat here, which is that if you do not have auto switch to classic view on, it may open in modern view for you, and it does not work in modern view for some reason. So just be aware of the fact that you will have to switch to classic view to see the information correctly. And that switch to classic view, as you can see, is up top right here. And by the way, we have a feature inside of the switch to classic view. If you go into the modern view twice, if you click on it the second time, it should stay in modern view. So it won't try to switch you back to classic view like over and over again.
Perfect. Thank you, Mark. So that concludes the part 1 of the certification program. Everything that we covered in this webinar would potentially be in the exam. These recordings will be available to rewatch for future reference. The recordings of the webinars, the video training is completely independent for the exam. So you could take the exam if you want to, or you could just watch the training and that's it. The parts 2 and part 3 are available to the public. Even if you don't have the paid version of RightTool and you're not going to take the exam, you can still watch the certification programs. Those are going to be available. At least the training will be available to everyone because we want you to learn it. We want you to get excited. We want you to buy it, right? So obviously that's really important. You can rewatch the recordings for reference only. As we mentioned, the exams will be available. I would say realistically mid-December. And we're still building our exam platform. So we're not going to use an outside, we could use an outside platform, or we're going to use a built-in one that we control. It will be an open book exam. So we open book in quotes because there's no book, but we encourage you to have RightTool open and have QuickBooks Online open while answering the exam questions. You must get 80% or more to pass the exam. The free version of the exam, the certified user, you can take unlimited times until you pass it. The expert version, you can take up to 3 times, and we'll reset it every 60 days. That just because we want a little bit more, how do I say, strictness around becoming a certified expert. And the exams will go live mid-December inside the RightTool Pro portal. And every single user, free or paid, has to have a RightTool Pro account in order to be able to take the exam. We're going to send a batch email to everyone once everybody has the ability to do so. So around December 1st, we're going to force people to create a free account in order to change any of the RightTool settings. So that's how we're going to force people to create the account, because they won't be able to switch settings until they have an account, even if it's a free account. So that's a really important change that's about to come. So what to expect live Monday, November 17th, 12 to 2 p.m. will be part 2. And that will be focusing on non-batching pro features. And then Monday, December 1st, 12 to 2 p.m. will be another 2 hours focused on the batch pro features. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to stop sharing and stop recording. However, since we have, let me stop recording.